So we'll take questions here in a moment. I want to suggest that he's covered a great deal of material very well, and that's the value of recording these sessions. And you could probably also get notes in some written form from Brother Austin, because that's what we want to do. We want to share this knowledge and have it published and have a lot of influence on all of you, and even others who may not be able to attend and be a part of this study. So bear that in mind. Do we have any questions at this time? And by the way, I'll start off with some brief comments I let you know of. As Brother Austin has been pointing out each night that I've been here, keep the comments brief, focus the questions. When Ramsey has the mic, stand up and wait for it, open your mouth so we can get a good recording of the questions. So Noah?
So in your opinion, Austin, at what point would you stop instructing a new Christian to just simply go read this passage, go read that passage, and do what it says, and begin to introduce them to these historical, grammatical methods of interpretation that you're advocating for?
It's a good question. I think the answer is subjective, because I think there will be some who are able to read and study the Bible and know what it says, but they may really struggle with that historical context. And like we said, historical context enhances. It might take it from black and white to color, but there's still the black and white picture. And if someone is struggling mightily to do that, the best answer is not to force feed it in. It's not to force them into, you must know the historical context or otherwise you're going to hell. I don't think that's wise or necessary. It enhances. And so I think you can tell from person to person if someone is really engaged, they're really getting it, and maybe they start asking the question, well, who are the Philistines? Then you can introduce them to that historical context. If they're asking the questions, I think that would probably be the point where you would start introducing them to that material and show them how to do that as you go. That would be my answer to that. I don't know what you think about that. If you have a better... Okay.
Hey, thanks, brother. So something that kind of got my mind moving here through this study was, if the whole purpose is to extract information out of a text that has one meaning by God, obviously it's such a large and in-depth text, it would be almost impossible, like you said, due to different nuances with different people, to go at it one particular way. But for like a brand new Christian, or I would say even a child, is there like a top 5 of like where one should begin in terms of like studying, so that you can actually break down like the true tenets of Christianity, or just even a bullet point of kind of what you would recommend there?
Yeah, so that is a good question. I know that I recommend new Christians in particular to start in the Gospels. Mark is a really good gospel because it's short, it's succinct, it's to the point, and it conveys the message, I think, very clearly. And so Mark, I think, would be a really good one. And if you can study, I think also a point in this is try to study together. That's not something that is something that I think I would like to improve in my own helping of people with that. But if you're studying together and they're embracing that information very well, they understand who Jesus is, then the next step, even historically, would be like the book of Acts. And so Acts shows so much about what is the church, why do we meet together, what is the gospel, and it establishes those principles. After those two, you said 5. So after those two, I really like Ephesians. That's one of my personal favorites, but that adds theology and practicality. James is another one that is very practical. And then the book of Psalms, honestly. Those would be my top 5, and it is completely subjective. And so there's wisdom in all these things, but that would be my suggestion in those. And it doesn't have to be in a linear order, but just as it works. Yeah.
First, I want to say thank you. It was a good presentation. You mentioned the truth stands up to scrutiny, and I appreciate that because I believe that is something that we need to do more, and sometimes we're afraid of. So here's my question. How do we go about answering a difficult question maybe we don't have the answer to, that maybe challenges our core beliefs? How should we respond to that? How should we answer that when someone is challenging with sincere questions? They're challenging maybe something we really believe. How do we go about finding that truth if we don't have the answer, or what is our attitude towards that?
Yeah. I love that question. Because like you say, a lot of times we're scared to do that. And I've even heard some people say that maybe we shouldn't even do that. Since we know the basic theological truth, we don't have to go back and revisit those. Well, yeah, we do. And so, step one for me is breathe. You don't have to rush into a stance or anything right away. You need to take a moment and say, okay, let's really think about this question. What surrounds this question? You may even have to rephrase the question to really get at the heart of what you're going at. And then I think from that, now you start a topical study, ultimately, if that's the type of question that you're having. Because I think that's what topical studies are. And so, now I'm going to get up here. I had the points myself, and then I'm not going to remember the points of topical study. But you go through a topical study, and I think you get all the relevant passages, all of them, and you have to really consider what people are saying. You have to be fair. You have to be loving. And I think loving, as we've talked about this week, is the primary thing. We can disagree, but if we don't show love, then we've lost it all. And so, if we keep that principle in mind, and we move forward, and we take it slow, and we're willing to say things like, I don't know, or I need to look at that more, or consult other people about that, I think all of those things are wise things to do. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that it does. And I hope that we continue to have uncomfortable conversations lovingly. Because that's something that we truly miss out on, I think, in our study. Thank you.
Just kind of a quick comment from the secular world. I used to de-escalate a lot of phone calls. So I had to get asked questions I didn't know the answer to. So maybe just, I don't know, brainstorming out loud for the brethren. It's always good, like you said, in truth. People know when you're being genuine or not, and they're really going to appreciate the genuineness. I don't know, some phrases that come to mind are, well, let's find out together. Let's learn this together. I'd be really fascinated with this. Or we have a great set of brethren here, and we can we can rely on them. We can ask them and say, hey, I actually have a great knowledge pool of people that we can really pull together and try to figure out the answer here together. And you're gonna, by asking this, and now I want to know. And so, get really excited about it and go all in and try to learn in. And then now you turn this awkward situation into an incredible teaching moment that could be turned into a sermon or something like that, and then really go from there. So, and maybe save a soul. So that's all I wanted to add.
Amen. Because this is the other thing. We were talking about personal Bible study tonight, but I want to emphasize for everyone that study, even though maybe we are the ones doing it, is not done in a vacuum. We have a brotherhood. We have people around us. And sometimes we never use them for that. And so thank you for saying that, because that is 100% how we can glean the understanding of other people. And case in point, Brother Hunter Drzinski, this is a couple weeks ago, I suppose, came up to me after services, and he said he wanted to know, why does God allow animals to suffer? What glory does He have in animals suffering? And that wasn't my lesson. And so I wasn't totally prepared for that. And I was like, well, I have a couple thoughts that come to mind, but we need to study this further. And in fact, I think next Tuesday that is going to be our study. We're going to talk about just suffering in general, but that is going to be one of our questions. Because when you're in a group of Christians who love the Lord and know their Bible, they can help you out with a lot of those things. That's the power of Bible study together.
I think one of the most important things when you're approached like that is to make sure you understand the question and why the question came up. Mm-hmm. And then definitely, if you don't know the answer, don't fumble.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. Because the origins of the question, like you say, often dictate why are you concerned about that? Not that maybe your first question is, hey, I want to know more about the Lord. Why do you want to know about them? Maybe not that. But getting to more the bottom of it, where you're asking, okay, what brought this on? Or is there something going on in your life? That can be a great opportunity, like you're saying, to help them, to help encourage them, or whatever the case may be. But also, like you say, to understand what are you asking? What is the question? I know I have trouble sometimes listening to people, and I think they mean one thing, and they didn't mean that thing. And so asking follow-up questions is very good advice.
Hey, brother, thank you for your presentation. Mm-hmm. I like what Chris was commenting about scrutiny, because, I've heard sermons about why commentaries are, you should stay away from commentaries and be very scared of them, is because they have wrong information sometimes. But I don't think that's true, because, it's good to put up what your beliefs are to scrutiny and other ideas. I mean, and then it's different for new Christians too, to the degree of how much you look at that stuff. Mm-hmm. I had a question about, I almost didn't ask this because I wasn't sure if it was almost too irrelevant, but I'll ask it anyway. One thing I always think about is how when we study the Old Testament on Wednesday nights, a lot of times a lot of brethren will make comments about tying Jesus to a certain thing that happened. And, we often talk about people who try and find Jesus in everything in the Old Testament. And we know that's wrong. But I feel like almost in an overcorrection, we say that anything that isn't said in the New Testament is specifically about Jesus. We can't draw that correlation. I was just curious about, your own hermeneutic as far as maybe finding a good middle ground, or maybe you take one of either stance.
Yeah, I feel like the New Testament helps us a great deal interpret the Old Testament, right? And so if there's either clear, and Chad talked a little bit about this last night, if there's clear things that point straight back in the Old Testament from the New Testament, obviously we can take those things. Like he was talking about, what was his example? Mine would be like when, the Good Shepherd, when he was talking about the Good Shepherd, it's an echo, it's an allusion maybe back to Ezekiel 34, or when Jesus says the Son of Man, referencing back to Daniel. We can take those things and use them very well. My only caution in this, where, try to find Jesus in everything, might ask, is that a bad thing? I don't know that that's a bad thing. The only danger, I think, is when we attribute that this is what it means, that this has to be what it means. That this Old Testament passage, this narrative, has to mean and can only mean something involving Jesus, particularly when it's not explicitly stated. As opposed to saying that, we can say, and this reminds me of, what Jesus did, and tie it back. We can tie things back to Jesus that way and say we see similarities between what this thing is and what this thing is. But that's much different than saying this passage means this, and saying this passage must be speaking about Christ. And so that would be my approach and my understanding maybe of the limitation there, if that makes sense.
Yes, some concluding remarks.
No, can't say as I do. Just thank you for your time and attention.